Welcome to Wind Down Wednesday. Here are your hosts, Jeffrey Tobias Halter and Amanda Hammett.
All right, thank you so much for joining us back at Wind Down Wednesdays. It's Black History Month, and we're focusing on the role each of us can play to forge and promote a diverse, equitable, and inclusive workplace. Our focus today is specifically the challenges facing women of color. But before we get into that, it is Wind Down Wednesday, so we got to talk about what we're drinking. I am drinking something that I tucked into my carry-on luggage when I came back from Spain, a little tinto, so red wine, just like a house red wine. So Jeffrey, what are you drinking?
Very nice. I'm also doing red wine. I have a Catherine Goldschmidt, Alexander Valley, Cabernet 2018. So we're cheering. And it is my absolute honor and privilege to introduce Minda Harts. Minda is a workplace and equity consultant. She is also the best-selling and award-winning author of The Memo, What Women of Color Need to Know to Secure a Seat at the Table. Her second book, Right Within, How to Heal from Racial Trauma in the Workplace, was released in October of 2021. And now her third book, You Are More Than Magic for Young Adults, will be released in the spring of 2022. I don't know how you keep writing these books back to back to back. You're amazing. Minda is a professor at NYU Wagner. She is a frequent guest on MSNBC and has been featured on ABC News, Forbes, Fast Company, and Time Magazine. Minda is a highly sought after speaker and has worked with such companies as Nike, Google, Salesforce, and dozens of other Fortune 500 companies. In 2020, she was named the top voice for equity in the workplace by LinkedIn. Minda hosts a lively weekly podcast called Secure the Seat.
All right. Well, Minda, I am so excited for this conversation. But before we get into that, what's your drink of choice today?
Yeah, well, I'm not, I wish that I did have red wine, but I'm actually on a cleanse right now. And so I'm drinking tea in my I Love Lucy cup. And so it's a black tea. So not as fun as you, but I'll pretend.
All right. Well, next time when we have you back on the show, we'll change that.
Yes. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, okay. So we're going to jump right in. You've done so much amazing work, and being Black History Month, I want to focus on your report around the state of Black women in corporate America and how it really shaped your first book, The Memo. You have so many great statistics in there, and the data is so rich and quite frankly, kind of sad. Black women hold less than 2% of VP roles, less than 2% of executive roles. The 2021 numbers are trending upward, but still abysmal. The research always shows that 70% of women of color stated they felt like their managers were not invested in their success. Talk to us about this data and the implications at a deeper level for individuals and organizations.
Yeah, again, thank you for having me, and thank you for bringing up this very important topic, because, if we want to make the workplace more equitable, then we have to solve for everybody, right? And one of the things that's most important is understanding the data. And I'm so happy that we have companies like McKinsey and Lean In that are putting and investing their money into data like this, because now when women of color say, I don't feel invested, it's not just a feeling. We can actually say, here's what the data says too, right? So it's fact and feeling, and both of those things matter. And one of the statistics that I really want to drill in on is the 70% of women of color feeling like their managers aren't invested in their success. I know for me, anytime I was promoted, it was because I had a manager who was invested in my success, right? So if we don't have managers that are invested in the entire team, then those numbers are never going to change, because that really correlates with retention and advancement numbers too. And so I think we have to talk about, what are the core competencies that managers might need so that they can manage diverse talent, so that everybody has an opportunity to get their seat at the table.
Oh, so good. So good. So I need to ask you, for our listeners who are managers, what could better look like if managers and leaders were fully invested in everyone on their team? Let's really talk about how they can be successful partners with women of color.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, I think we all want that, right? Every manager wants to be able to do their best work, and every employee, for the most part, wants to be able to do the best work of their career, right? And so I think looking at the relationship as a partnership, how do we both get what we need to make sure that we're adding to the bottom line of the company? And I think I'll take it back and make it more personal. When I first became a manager way back in the day, I was really good at my job, but no one ever taught me how to be a manager, how to manage people, right? So I was hitting all my numbers and raising a lot of money, but when it came to managing a team of 10 people, I did not have the competency to do that, right? And so I might have made some missteps. So I think it's really important for us to talk about what are we call them soft skills, but they're actually leadership skills that managers need to be able to manage teams, right? So for example, one might be how you handle conflict resolution. If you have a Black woman on your team or people of color and you're not comfortable talking about race, that's going to be very hard for you to manage and invest in that team member, right? Doesn't mean that you're racist, doesn't mean that you're sexist, but you might need some tools to be a better manager, right? More efficient manager. And I think we have to have those conversations about what coaching, executive coaching looks like. What resources do people need so that they can do the best work? Because managing isn't just making sure that the boat keeps going forward, but we also have to make sure that everybody on that boat has what they need to be successful.
Allyship was the word of the year for 2021, and some companies are investing it and others are just kind of giving it lip service. You have created a manager's pledge of action, 5 things leaders need to do, managers need to do. Can you walk us through those? And I'm going to, give it to me real simple. What are the couple things I need to do specifically as a white male to better support women of color who are on my team and in my company?
Yeah, I'm glad that you asked this question, Jeffrey, because I think at the core of it, we all see ourselves as allies, right? Most of us see ourselves as good people, but the reason why I created the Manager's Pledge is because we see ourselves that way, but do the people on our team see us that way, right? That's where the rubber meets the road. I often ask those who are well-intentioned, who see themselves as allies, when is the last time someone has benefited from your allyship? That's a different answer, right? That means we actually have to be intentional. We have to be actionable. And one of the pillars that I talk about in the Manager's Pledge is I will acknowledge that I have biases that I need to understand and reconcile, right? Doesn't make you a bad person. Each and every one of us has biases that we need to reconcile, right? We might have had an experience in our youth or in college or whatever have you that makes us look at a certain demographic a certain way, but that doesn't mean that everybody should be looked at or in that certain lens, right? And so I think that we have to understand, what is it that I'm bringing to the table? Another thing that I want to say is I will commit to engaging in courageous conversations. They will be rough and difficult, but I know they're necessary to make an equitable workplace. Like, we can't shy away from equity. And I think for so long, companies and organizations have said, oh, you can opt into equity. And what I'm saying is we can no longer opt in, we have to make it mandatory. And so at the core of these pillars is saying, what can we do to make sure that everyone feels like they belong, right? At the core of this is really about belonging. And I think if we're all showing up to work, resetting the equity clock, saying, what can we do to commit to everyday actions? Even when I make a mistake, I'm committing to the act of equity. And I think that's like the pillar, right? And I think getting into this, no longer opting in, but making it mandatory. And when we normalize equity, then we hold everyone accountable.
Such good, actionable steps. We never have enough time, but as we wrap up, it is Black History Month, and you've done so much work around supporting what women of color can do. So for our listeners, and it is Black History Month, do you have one piece of advice for women of color who are listening to our podcast to be more successful?
Yeah, well, thank you for hosting this conversation. And I think the main thing is that we have to be comfortable letting people know what good looks like for us. I think for so long we have swept things under the rug and we haven't been honest about some of the experiences that we're having inside the workplace. And we can't solve if people don't know that you're being harmed or that you're not being invested in. And so what would it look like if you gave yourself permission to ask for what you want and need so that you can have a better workplace experience?
Wow. I know that this is a fairly short amount of time, but I feel like this episode was just jam-packed with just like, hey, leader, you need to do this, this, and this. And thank you for laying it out that plainly for us and for the audience, Minda. I really appreciate it. For those of you in the audience, if you want to learn more about Minda and her work is obviously very important for all of us to achieve equity. Please go to her website at mindaharts.com. And of course, you can find her books at your favorite bookseller. And I look forward to seeing each and every one of you in the very next episode.
I'm Jeffrey Tobias Halter. Thank you for joining us this week for Wind Down Wednesday.
Thank you for joining us for Wind Down Wednesday. If you like this episode, please subscribe to receive more episodes straight to your inbox.